There has been some, I believe it may have started in Arizona, and they talked about a revolution. And I like the idea of a revolution. Even Jefferson advocated on occasion you need a little violent revolution, but I'm not for violence. I'm for nonviolence, but I am for revolution. I want revolutionary changes, even if it is only going back to the goodness of our Constitution. Unfortunately, that's revolutionary. There have been many peaceful revolutions throughout history, and they're usually carried out by a small group of individuals dedicated to certain principles, and they usually get challenged. But the first challenge they get is they are totally ignored by the establishment, by the status quo. And, quite frankly, we as a group, our views have been totally ignored for a long, long time. But let me tell you one thing. I think the period moving away from that of ignoring us has passed. They can ignore us no longer. The second stage is usually that of ridicule, and I'm sure many of you in this audience have been ridiculed for your belief, for you standing up for principle, for even joining in this campaign. Why would you support these silly notions? And on TV, I have been exposed to a bit of that. My goodness, you support that, and on and on. So the ridicule has been going on for a good while. So we are literally in that stage. But I think we're moving gently over, or in the direction of the next stage, which is when they fight us. When they literally, ignore, then they ridicule, and then they get worried, and then they might fight us. And a philosophic fight, of course. But when you think about it, immediately after the first debate, somebody in Michigan, anybody remember that story? Somebody in Michigan said, we need a petition. We need to get that guy off the stage. He doesn't represent what we believe in. And I have to confess, maybe that was true. But they wanted to, of course, silence us and our movement. And yet they now, of course, have done something rather recently. So they failed to invite us to some of the parties that they have. So sometimes that leads to having a bigger and a happier party. Isn't it a bit ironic that those same individuals who would like to undermine the democratic process of elections here are the same ones who are quite willing to send your children and your dollars overseas to spread democracy in the Middle East? They try to ignore, they can't do that anymore. The ridicule isn't working, and they are getting a little tougher. But then in the end of the successful revolutions in ideas has always been that you win in the end. It has been said by Benjamin Franklin, that it's a very dangerous notion that you can be made safer by the sacrifice of a little bit of liberty here and there. That attitude is unnecessary. We are always much safer if we're free than if we ever concede to sacrificing one drop of our liberty. The purpose of all political activity should be very singular. It should be for the promotion of liberty. No more complicated than that. For our benefit, it's very simple. I, as an elected official, it's not complicated for me. If my goal is to protect your liberty, all I have to do is fulfill my oath of office and obey the Constitution. I've been especially excited about the campaign, and I've always admitted that I was probably one of the most reluctant. Not understanding how pervasive the ideas have spread, how many people we could get involved, and yet it is doing wonders, what is happening, and the internet is tremendously beneficial. Some people come along and they say, well, we're going to study the Ron Paul campaign and study on how they did this. But you know what? We didn't do it, you did it. The other thing that's exciting about the campaign is the fact that young people are coming. The next generation are coming. They've been tipped off. They have come to realize that they're getting the bad end of this deal. They're inheriting a mess. They're inheriting debt, bad money, and a government that's abusive to their personal privacy and their personal liberties. They understand about the real ID and the invasion of privacy on the internet. They understand that government is pervasive in their lives. And they also know, young people are starting to realize that they can add up. A little bit of arithmetic tells them, well, there's 70 or 80 trillion dollars of obligations, and their numbers are slightly lower each year. Where's the money going to come from? It's going to come out of their hides? So maybe, just maybe, this new generation that is coming in will be on our side in the preservation of liberty. And that to me is really exciting. One of the things that I tend, they on occasion call me Dr. No. And people say, well, is that good or bad? And I said, well, I don't like to be negative. I want to be positive. Now, I told my wife this, and she knows about it, but a lot of my staff loves it. And she said, well, there's no problem. Just tell them it's spelled with a K. The ideas of liberty are young. The ideas of America are very young. So I resent this negative approach. Oh, you're going back to the 19th, 20th century. Yeah, he would be a good candidate in 1832 or something. And true principles aren't dated. And the principles of liberty are very young. You know what is old-fashioned and what is ancient? Is tyranny, authoritarianism. The whole notion of the respect for the individual is what is key. But the secret to liberty is the assumption of each and every one of us to assume our responsibility, to be self-reliant and dependent on ourselves and get the support from taking care of ourselves and taking care of our families. That's what counts. When you have liberty, it releases the creative energy that we all have to one degree or another. Each one of us have creative energy, and our responsibility is to use it to our best ability. And every one of us will have different creative energy. I was on an art show today, and I admit it, I have no ability whatsoever in art. Others do. Others have ability in music, and that is great. Every one of us have abilities, but they can only really be taken care of in a free society. When government comes in and takes care of us and say that they are going to make us better, the economy's fair, and the world better off, they can only do that with the sacrifice of personal liberty, and it undermines every one of us in the individual sense. And that is the whole principle that we have to struggle for. If we have liberty, then we personally are obligated to work the best we can for our own excellence and work in a virtuous way. When we live in a tyrannical society, it undermines that incentive. It takes away the ability of us to operate because the government consumes us. The Constitution was designed never to restrain the people. The Constitution has been designed for one key purpose: to restrain the government.